everyone on this rainy and apparently smoking day. But the smoking problem should be solved by now. We put a chip in the ones who are causing it. And I got really angry too. That may help. So today I'm going to talk about the ugly, the bad, and the good. And I'm going to first take you on some personal anecdote, and I'm going to end on a positive note. So it's going to be tough in the beginning, and then we'll loosen up, and it will get better. Let's start by transitioning from the talk that was just given to you. And I had the same question as you may have. Why would we present a talk about fake technologies being introduced in companies? And I noticed that a lot of you were laughing about some of the things that were said because it seems so distant, it seems so far away. But it might be much closer than you think because all of these changes are gradually being introduced. And if we don't think about it and talk about it in public debates, but also at the governmental level in our parliaments, then we might actually end up in a situation where we no longer have choices. I think everybody is aware of what is happening in Hollywood. The Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild are on strike. That means no American movies are being produced. As a European, I'm not sure if that's such a bad thing. But that means 170,000 people, actors and writers, are on strike. And one of the reasons they are on strike is because of the rise of developing and applying artificial intelligence in the movie industry. And they are afraid that they will be replaced. Now, the ones who are promoting AI will say, well, some jobs will go, but it will create new jobs. It will be fantastic. We can make actors look younger. We can do these magical tricks, and so on and on. When you hear a marketeer talk, maybe you should be a little bit critical. What I love about this strike is that it's pretty unique to see these mass protests in democratic societies. The last time the actors were striking was somewhere in the 1960s in America. So I really hope that they continue to strike. I don't think that we will miss American movies a lot for if it's like a half year. I think we can survive that. But I really hope that they continue striking until there is a real discussion about what does AI mean, how can people relate to that, and the ideas of replacing people, creating new jobs, to what extent is that actually true? The positive message about this is that if you want to protest a change, if you want to change something in society, it requires apparently two parameters to be successful. The first is it needs to be peaceful. The second is you need a threshold of 3.5% of the people. This is based on an American study of protests, mass protests in societies around the world. And those are the three things. So 170,000 actors, I think that's a good start to have a discussion about AI. So that is the intro. And then I'm going to talk about the ugly and the bad. Most of you just see a green bag, and in a way it is. But the story behind it is that this represents, for me, something else. So apparently, we were asked at the last minute. I had a talk with Arash, and he said, I want two things on stage: vulnerability and authenticity. And I had already built that into my presentation. I'm not sure if I should be sharing this with you, but if we're talking about being human, I think the first thought that comes to my mind is that we talk about what it means being vulnerable. And I can speak here as an academic, as a researcher, share professional insights, but then at the same time, I'm creating a screen, a block, a wall between you and me, and I don't want to do that. So the story behind the bag is, and first the question for you, who clearly remembers the very first memory of their lives as a child? Who has that memory? Who has a memory of their lives? Can you raise your hands if you clearly remember do you have a very first memory, or is it all hazy? Are you afraid to raise your hands, or does everyone has like mass amnesia? Anyway, this is my first memory. It's when I'm in the living room, standing behind a couch, and this bag was my school bag that I had as a toddler. I think I must have been about 3 to 4 years old. And my father was using that bag to beat my mother. And that kind of set the scene for what my childhood looked like. I did not experience violence myself, but I was exposed to it. And that is part of, unfortunately, that is also part of being human. Move forward 10 years later, I was late in a class, an ice skating class that my father taught. He had founded that ice skating club, and he let out the air from the tire to punish me for being late, which meant that I had to walk back home. And about 2/3 of the way, all of a sudden, as I was walking back with my bike, I was about 11 years old then, there was a guy who parked right in front of me, blocking my way. And at the right was a creek, so there was water. And at my left was the road. So he was literally blocking my path. And he stepped out of his car, and he said, "Shall I bring you home?" I didn't know him, but I felt right away what kind of situation I probably was in. So I said to him, "Do you see that house?" And it was about 100 meters farther. There was a house, and I said, "You see that? That's where I live." And he turned around, got in his car, and drove away. But if the house hadn't been there, it was like an industrial area. It was quite deserted. Who knows, maybe I would not be standing here today. Why am I telling you this story about a potential child abuser? Because child abuse is currently one of the top reasons why artificial intelligence is being promoted as a technology that can solve the problem. Recently, the European Commission published a report. And in that report, it is suggested that all of our messaging applications, so for instance, Signal, WhatsApp, Messenger, that all of those applications would be scanned. Now, how are you going to scan the messaging applications of 450 billion people in Europe? Of course, you're going to need to use artificial intelligence. The problem with that is it raises a few questions, like, does that really solve the problem? The idea would be the number one reason used to promote that, to suggest that legislation is to combat online sexual abuse material. And to give you an idea about the scale we are talking about, before Corona, it was an $800 million industry to produce and consume, between parentheses, sexual child abuse material. Because of the COVID policies, and especially because of the lockdowns, that has grown with 100-fold. Today, it's a $150 billion industry. And it raises the question whether you tackle such a horrible crime with artificial intelligence. It looks like if you're applying artificial intelligence to all messages blindly, then I don't think you will be able to specifically tackle that problem. Also because it's very hard to distinguish between a mother sending a picture of her child taking a bath and someone who has other intentions or in other contexts. But the fact of the matter is that child sexual abuse is promoting laws and technologies that are marketed as targeting that problem. And that creates the problem of us entering into surveillance societies where we have cameras watching us, where we have facial recognition technology following everything we do. But the question is, does it really solve the problem? As a criminologist, I know that there are different parameters, and one of the greatest causes of child sexual abuse is that many of the perpetrators have been abused themselves. Violence creates violence, and you cannot solve that with technology alone. You may need very specific technology to target the problem in very specific ways. You will need to infiltrate with police these networks that are organizing this, but only making a law that will scan everything you say, everything you do, will not solve the problem, in my opinion. And maybe you are criticizing the government, maybe you are laughing about something. Remember that if technologies are implemented to monitor everything you do and say and send, that technology can also be used against you. So artificial intelligence is a technology which I think may bring certain benefits, but we need a far more broader discussion about it. That was the ugly and the bad. Now let's move on to something good. I think it's quite clear what you see on the slide, but what you may not know is that currently a technology is being developed to help babies grow in an artificial environment. These are called, you may call them artificial wombs, others prefer the term perinatal life support systems. The idea is that babies who are born prematurely can be helped, can have better chances of survival. Why am I bringing up this very specific example? Because the first part that I talked about, it may sound as if I am against technology, which I'm not, but I am in favor of being very conscious of what kind of technologies we develop and where we want to go. The idea of growing babies in sort of pods or artificial wombs has been, this year, I've seen that it has been marketed into a movie from someone who was, presenting the idea that there would be factories with artificial wombs. And it was quite interesting to notice that some people thought it was real. At the moment, there are 5 teams in the world developing artificial wombs. The American team from Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, has received the approval to start clinical trials. The problem with this is, and that is actually the most important concept that I would like you to remember, is what I call the transhuman paradox. So Robin, or Isil by a real name, has presented us with a world where technology is doing everything or monitoring everything and making us feel happy. But the question is, we laugh about that. You may have thought it was impossible. But the question is does technology bring us into a situation where we can improve lives? Then it might not be easy to reject that. Imagine two parents with a 20-week-old baby, and you have this technology of artificial wombs to help this baby. What are you going to do? Are you going to say no? Then you're morally inhumane if that technology can save the baby. On the other hand, the problem is what I'm talking about, what I've just shared, is partial. It's called partial ectogenesis. But there are also people who dream about full ectogenesis, in which people like Pablo would grow from a fertilized egg into a baby in a human or in an artificial womb. And you may think that right now it's not possible, but there was a time when people thought it wasn't possible to have an airplane up in the air or in space even. So I think it's better to think about that now. And the transhumanist paradox means that when we do use technology, the more we integrate technology into our bodies, into our streets, into our lives, the more we become disconnected from our human nature. And if we don't do anything, then we might be morally inhumane. So I think we need to do something with that. And that is the next question. If humanity continues to mindlessly and without any limitation continues to develop all sorts of technologies, then the question, at some point, the question will arise, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to go beyond that? Beyond, does that word even exist? I mean, the word exists, of course, but is there something beyond? And what would that be? And do we want to go there? Or does it mean that humanity would be like the sun that's completely blocked here? Does it mean the end of humanity? And would we transform into something that we don't want to be? And so my most important message is where do we want to go? What do we want to do? Do we want to be smoked out of a tent? Or do we get up and get angry and protest and make conscious choices? Yuval Harari, who was a speaker at this event last year, thinks that human beings have no free will. Free will is an illusion. So you are here because you can't help yourselves. And I'm here because I'm somehow like promoted or programmed to just be with you today. And quite frankly, if my heart is at home right now, because I just received a call this morning that my daughter is sick. She's still very, very young. So as a mother of 3, what I really want to be now is not with you, I'm sorry to say it. I want to be at home with my little girl. But I am here today, I think, out of free will. And this picture that you're seeing here represents a discussion that has been going on for at least 2,000 years since Greek philosophers started writing about it. Do humans have free will? Or are they a blank slate? And I think that the more we use technology, the more we blindly use and develop technology, the less free will we will continue to have. And so I think it is possible to expand our free will, to expand the choices we make, if we consciously choose to do that. And this is, we're almost there. I'm on time, a rush. I just need 3 more minutes. What is this? This is a flamingo. It's one flamingo. I thought that would be a nice way to close my talk. A flamingo apparently is a very social animal. They flock with thousands together. And technology, isn't that a little bit the same? I mean, look around in this tent. I mean, it's like filled with technology. But at the same time, you're here. We are a collective part of humanity. And I think we can make the choice to decide what we do with this flamingo called technology. Do we allow it to flock it together in thousands? And do we say it's impossible to stop technology? It's impossible to stop or to think about artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. We need it. It's great. It's amazing. We have a chip in our arm to pay. Isn't that wonderful? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not here to make a stand about one thing or another. What I want you to do is to think about the small things you might be able to do in your lives to connect more to yourself, to other humans, to your partner, to your children. How many of you, when you get home, you check your mobile phone, constantly scrolling? How many of you put the phone away for all evening? I don't think that's that many, but it's something, it's small changes we can make. And the final slide is definitely my favorite, not because of the phrase, but when you saw this slide at the beginning, you just saw a little boy. But this is humanity. It's my youngest son looking over the lake of Geneva. A lot of laws, a lot of international law has been inspired, made, talked about in Geneva. And when we talk about technology, when we talk about transhumanism, which is the ultimate endpoint, if we keep on mindlessly developing and producing and distributing and applying technology, then the question is, do we want that? Do we want to live in a world without color? And most importantly, without love.
Still yours. Thank you.